The following presentation contains sexual references, adult language, and mature subject matter. Viewer and parental discretion is advised.
Today's episode of Welcome. At Skeena Diversity Center, we have space where people come and offer workshops. And in the end of April, we played a host to Stephen Garrett, who's a death coach and was doing a death tour in the Northwest. So he stopped here for a 2-day workshop together with spiritual coach Lisa Muir. And I was able to take part and got permission to record part of his presentation and the workshop, and it's really interesting. At first, of course, I wasn't too sure. Death tour, what are you going to talk about? What are people going to attend? So that was a bit of a risk that Lisa and Stephen took, but there's really many people came out and participated, very open in sharing, and Stephen has really challenged many of the perceptions and the way that, especially in North America, death is accepted and or viewed often in a very scary way. There was a lot of discussion about what happens in our hospitals. It's very interesting because there is a lot of care but more care is needed, and also how do we care about our practitioners and service providers who witness death on a daily basis.
I am Stephen, and I am a death coach. Many people have encouraged me to change my title to a transition coach or a passing coach or something other than that, but I'm a bit on the bold side, and we do die. Death is a fundamentally important aspect of life. Always has been, always will be. Our living actually is very dependent on dying. Can't live if there's not death around. For example, something died so I could have this amazing colorful cookie on my side, and I could have this chai tea. I eat meat, so things die to support my living. But in North America particularly, we have a very negative approach to death and dying. We've pushed it away into hospitals, we've pushed it away into morgues, we've professionalized it, we don't see the bodies much, we don't get involved with it. It's become kind of like a taboo topic. So I'm all about busting taboos and bringing death back to its fundamental and very important place in life. It's the Grim Reaper. I have created that myth of the Grim Reaper. It doesn't serve us well, I've noticed, because if I were sitting here with a black hoodie and you couldn't see my face and I had a switchblade, would you sit in your seats very long? Likely not. So we've dressed death up as the Grim Reaper, which is a black hoodie. You can't see the face, and what's it called, scythe? What an image to snuggle up to. I mean, if that was sitting here, I'd probably be getting my sorry ass over there. So we've created this really negative, nasty relationship with death that isn't serving us at all well. It has us pushing seniors into long-term care homes and old age homes. Let's push the aging process away. Let's get it as far away from us as we can, because at the end of aging is dying, and at the end of dying is death. And at the end of death is no more loved one. So our culture has a very dysfunctional relationship with death and dying. And our culture is actually limiting itself by being frightened of death. If you get the idea that every senior's home in Canada is actually a library, and nobody's taking the books out because we're frightened of death and our elders are closer to death than the youngers are, what a waste of wisdom. So death really does hold living away, holds all kinds of things away. Death is like a seed. If you planted a death seed, it would spawn into a bush, and one of the branches of the bush would be death of a relationship. We don't do that very well. Death of a job, death of the bank account, death of a personality, loss of a faculty. Death has got multi-facets to it, and multi-branches to it, because we're afraid of the big death, what we think is the big death of the body. We have a diminished willingness to face change and risk. So it's a real paralyzing fear. It really does shut our living down. I remember once one of my boys was jumping out of a plane. Had a parachute on, by the way. He wasn't just jumping. But he had a videographer with him, taking pictures, like a video, as they were floating through the air. And my young boy, Ben, was riding tandem, so there was an experienced jumper behind him. And so the guy's got his camera right in Ben's face, and Ben's eyes are like wide, like this. He's got this grin on his face, and he's going, oh, I can't use the word, but he's like, F, and he's like, whoa, this is so cool. And he landed on the ground, he kept running. That was the coolest thing, he was so alive. And I thought, isn't that interesting? He's plummeting to his death, because who knows if the chute opens? And that was part of his rush of living. That's part of what made him feel so alive. He landed on the ground, he was like, yeah, that was so cool, let's do it again. It was that living piece as he's falling through the air that I went, oh man, isn't that interesting? My young son has just taught me how powerful the fear of death can be, or the openness to it can be. And he was so vital and so alive because he was on the edge, right where life and death meet. He didn't know whether or not that chute was going to open. So he's on that edge, and that edge of life and death is exquisite. Most of us are in the matrix, and we've pulled back from the edge because we're afraid of what's on the other side. We're afraid to die. We're afraid to lose things. We're afraid to change. Our culture is so tight because we're afraid of the ultimate change, which is death. I used to be a cremationist, and so I would burn caskets with people in them and return the casket in the form of ashes to the family. It was one of the most beautiful jobs I'd ever had. It was spurred by my experience in Varanasi, India, being in the Ghats, watching people cremate there. Very different than it is here, by the way. And what's my train of thought? I was a cremationist. Why was I telling you this story?
We want to know more about you.
Oh, okay. Good. So every so often my mind goes blank. Maybe it's because I'm like 66 and I'm like aging a little bit. Maybe, I don't know. Death in my mind. Anyway. So that cremationist activity brought me very close to the edge of living and dying, and noticing what goes on with it, and noticing how frightened people. Some people wouldn't even come into the crematorium, they were so afraid. I thought, wow, this is your loved one, and wouldn't you want to pat the casket or touch the face or say goodbye? And they were just like petrified to even walk in there, because it was death. And what that meant was they were going to die. And so they were facing their own reality. A lot of grief, by the way, isn't grief because I've lost you as a friend and I've just met you. It's because I'm losing me. And I'm seeing through the death of you my own mortality, and I haven't lived fully yet, and I'm pissed about it. So I'll grieve, but I'm not really grieving you totally. I am, but I'm grieving the loss of me too. Because there, but for the grace of God, go I. This is why death is so difficult. That's why I was going to tell you. That's where the story was going. When I first got to the crematorium and began burning people, I saw 12 people a day, dead bodies. I've seen 1,500 dead bodies if I've seen one. That's a lot of death to see and touch and smell and be viscerally involved in. For the first 3 months, I was getting headaches, and I was getting nauseousness, and I was having diarrhea and all kinds of discomfort. And I'm a very healthy guy, and I eat really well. I thought, what's going on here? How come I've got these headaches? How come I'm getting sick to my stomach? How come I'm having nauseousness? You know what it was? I forgot to let my body know that it was going to be seeing a lot of death and touching a lot of dead bodies and lifting a lot of dead weight and being around death. I just forgot to tell my body, like, dude, it's okay. Breathe, relax, buddy. Settle down. You're alive today. Yes, they're dead, but you're going to live tomorrow. Our bodies are programmed to survive. We have a mammalian implant in our brain that programs us to survive. So when we look at death from our body goes like, oh, shit. Like, whoa, I don't want to go there. It's a natural response that we've forgotten how to live with and be with. What's happened? How come our relationship is shitty when it comes to looking at death, square in the eye? And I recognized as I went back through the demographics of where we used to live, we all used to live on the farms. 93% of Canadians lived rurally on the farms in the early 1900s, not so long ago. 100 years ago, 93% of us lived rurally, close to nature. We had gardens, we had chickens, we had cows. We would slaughter our own food. We would plant our food and we'd harvest it. We were very much in the cycle of living and dying. Now, 93% of us live urbanly. We think chickens come on a piece of styrofoam and is meat. We don't get that there was an actual living thing that had to sacrifice its life so we could eat. We're out of touch with the cycle of life and death. We just removed from it. You come to Vancouver, man, oh man, it's just like concrete and clay. It's just, there's no life there. You gotta get way out to the Fraser Valley to see life. People think that their food comes from Save-On. They don't get that it comes from somebody planting a seed in the ground and somebody harvesting the lettuce. So that was part of the reason that we're out of touch with dying, is we're out of touch with the cycle of living and dying, because we're now urban dwellers and we have a few people getting us our food. Interesting is back in the early 1900s, in Canada, we used to live multi-generationally. So we'd have the grandparents and the parents and the kids all in the same house. 85% of us lived that way as recently as 1900. Now 11% of us do. So we've lost touch with the grandparent-parent-child structure. So what do grandparents do? They age. But we don't live with them anymore, so we don't see it. So our children are out of touch with aging, and this whole anti-aging movement in North America is really not serving us well at all, because it's again based on the fear of death. The billions of dollars that are spent a year on Botox is a result of our abject total fear of death and dying. God, get rid of those wrinkles, you know? Get that stuff cleaned up. Look like you're 16 when you're 66. It's all the same thing. It's all based on the fear of death. So we've designed a structure now that has us distant from death. I've decided to live with my in-laws because they're aging and they need support. They need love and care and attention. They're totally fine right now. They've got lots of their capacity and they're very mobile. But as they age, they're going to become less so. But why wouldn't I have them in my house? They're my family. Why wouldn't I share space with them? Because they're close to dying, more closer than I am? Yes, let's push them away. So only 11% of us now live in multi-generational families to our own loss. And it's all based on the fear of death and where we live and how we live. We're just out of practice, that's all. It's very simple. Some big-ass radio guy was giving me an interview in New York City. They said, well, what would you do? Like, he was treating me like I was a smart aleck, you know? He had that attitude of a poor radio show interviewer. So what would your solution be? And I said, well, why don't you plant a garden on your balcony in your apartment? Well, that's a stupid idea. I said, no, think about it. Plant a garden. Get your hands in Mother Nature. Put a seed in the ground. Nurture the seed. Watch it blossom and grow. Harvest a tomato from it. Get back in touch with life. And oh, what a good idea that would be. You can do simple things to get back in touch with life and death. Because to be honest with you, we're not getting out of here alive. I thought by being a death coach that God would give me the only free pass, that I would live forever. You know what God said to me? Sorry, it's a temporary job. You're dead too. None of us are getting out of here alive. What would happen if we were wrong about death? And it's not the Grim Reaper at all. What would happen if death is not the enemy? Oops. A case of mistaken identity. That's what I say. We've just made a slight little error. What happens if death looks like this? Yellow socks, yellow shirt, red bald head. What happens if death looks like this and behaves like this? What happens if death isn't the Grim Reaper at all? Would you be cool to hang out with me? Yes, you would. I'm a cool guy. I'm loving, I'm friendly, I give great hugs. I swear a bit too much, but that's the way it is. What would happen if we embraced death as a teacher? Think about it. Death as a teacher? Oh, isn't that odd? What would happen if we could renovate? What happens today in this room if we all say, you know what, Stephen's right. Death is not the Grim Reaper. It's nothing to be afraid of, something to study and learn and get excited about. What would happen if death were actually an inspirational teacher? God damn it, in Terrace, we've just decided the Grim Reaper's banished. Death is now an inspirational teacher. Change the identity. What would happen in your families? What would happen in your hospitals? What would happen in your doctor's offices? What would happen in your long-term care homes? What would happen in your pharmacies? What would happen here if, in fact, death were welcome? I'm not asking death to hurry, by the way. I got a lot of life to live. I'm not about getting death to hurry. But what would happen if it was just welcome here? And it was okay to talk about it. It was okay to look at it and smell it and taste it and become intimate with it. It was okay to actually embrace your death. What would happen if embracing our death actually inspired us to live a passionate, reckless, wild, zany life? Because you just don't know, do you? We all think we have it tomorrow. I bet you if I asked each one of you, say, I'm going to be around tomorrow. Well, maybe. Maybe you are. And probably you will be. But just in case you're not, because some of us won't know when the end comes. We'll just be dead. We won't know when the end comes. Some of us will be in a car accident. We'll die suddenly and unexpectedly. What happens if we didn't fully live today because we thought we had it tomorrow? Like my son learned at the age of 20. I'm so proud of him. Wow, what a lesson to learn. I sat with a lady when she was 86. By the way, I learned so much when people are dying. They're so generous with their wisdom. I sat with her and she was frightened and her breathing was getting quick and she was scared and didn't know what's going on because she's getting set to die. And I hopped up on her bed with her and I picked up her frail little body. I put her back on my chest and just put my arms around her just to be with her and hold her and help her settle in and become a bit more conscious. So she started to breathe and relax a little bit. And I lay her back down in her bed and put her in her pillows. And we just held hands for like half an hour. We just kind of sat there and she didn't say anything and I didn't say much. And she kind of came to and she saw me. And I had been with her for quite a while, so we had a relationship. And she is also as irreverent as I am. And she came to, she said, "Oh, Stephen, it's you." And I said, "Yeah, who are you expecting, the Grim Reaper, you know?" But she just laughed like that. She just burst out laughing and we just chatted a little bit. And then she fell asleep again and we just continued to hold hands. And she woke up again. She said, "Stephen, can I tell you something?" And I said, "Sure, I'd love to hear it." She said, and I knew her husband really well. She said, you know I love my husband a lot, don't you?" I said, "Yeah, you guys really are great lovers." She said, "Well, I want to tell you something. I always held back 5% of my love for my husband. I don't think I should have done that." And then she fell asleep again and died 4 hours later. And I thought to myself, wow, that was a deathbed confession. That was a deathbed regret. She held her love back and she didn't think she should. I was lucky. I just said to her, "Thank you." There's nothing I could do with it, Cher. It's like, here, hop on the cell phone and tell him you love him. I mean, you know, just say thank you for her generosity. So when I was done my shift, I sat in my car and I thought, whew, I don't want to be lying on my deathbed saying to Lisa, "Oh man, I held my love back for my wife." Right? I don't want to go there. I want to die like, "Oh man, that was great," and clunk, I'm at it, right? So I made a list of people that in my estimation, I thought I was holding my love back from. And my wife, because sometimes wives are difficult, was on the top. Mother-in-law was next, and then my mother, right? So the women of my life, which are sometimes a challenge for us guys. And then there was my son and my brother and a few other people. I had about 6 people on my list. And I made a commitment to this woman's death because she was so generous in her dying with me. She left me such a beautiful gift. I thought, for her, I'm going to love my ass off with these 6 people. Every time I sit with somebody who's passing, I learn something. And my life is enriched by it. I'm thinking, what the heck? Their death is my life enrichment. And it is. And if we would spend more time with each other as we age, our young ones would learn. Our elders would get a chance to make meaning of their life. What a gift that is. I mean, I can just imagine. Get the idea that we change the names on our long-term care homes to seniors' libraries or wisdom places or something that's like not like long-term care. I mean, God, that's a morbid phrase. What would happen if we had a library card for each person in that long-term care place that gave a list of all the things they were good at? And then we put the library cards out for public view with their permission, of course. And the young kids come in and they go, "Oh," and they look through the library cards of living library books. "Oh, I want to take," say your name again?
Nirmal.
Nirmal, thank you. I'm really bad with names. I want to take Nirmal out. He's got this really great stuff. And so I say, Nirmal, would you like to go for a cup of tea? And I'm 16. And he would say,
Of course.
right? Because an elder would say, of course, to a younger. Right? I mean, if you're an elder, you would say, of course. So the younger takes the elder out, and then the elder gets to share. And the younger goes, wow, that's so cool. You were alive at the time when there wasn't cell phones? How did you do it, dude? You had to lift this heavy thing up and talk on it with a cord? And you can't take pictures with it? I mean, just imagine the joy that would happen between the younger and the elder. The elder would get to make meaning of their life. They would get to, wow, I had somebody, because people on their deathbed wonder, is anybody going to miss me? Did my life make a difference? Will I be remembered at all by anybody? I mean, this is what people who are dying go through. And imagine if we set up in a way where death wasn't an enemy, and young kids would come in and hang out with those elders, and allow the elders to share their wisdom, like really. And the youngers would get filled up with this life experience instead of this shit from a book. I love books, but sometimes you gotta get it from the body. Storytelling is so instructional for young kids. I run a death cafe in Maple Ridge, right? It's called a death cafe. It's in a bookstore. It's like a philosopher's cafe, but we call it a death cafe for a particular reason. I've been running them there since October 2013. The store owner, Dan, took a big risk. I said to him, dude, I'd like to run a death cafe here. Like, it's really cool. He said, a what? His arms crossed and he's backing away from the till, you know. I said, yeah, I'd like to run a death cafe here. He said, what the heck is a death cafe? Well, it's a place where people come and sit and they talk about the meaning of death to them. It's not a grief and loss group, it's not anything like that. It's just a philosopher's cafe around death. And he said, yeah. What's happening in Maple Ridge, because we've been running them every 6 weeks since October 2013. We had 30 at our last death cafe. We had an elder, Sandy, who's 87. She's fantastic. She's an amazing teacher. We had kids there 16, 18. Half the group was below the age of 25. The other half were old farts like me. And so I said to the young kids, I said, why do you come here? You could be out smoking pot or drinking or partying. Why do you come here? I had one girl who chose to come to the death cafe instead of going to her staff Christmas party. Like, what the heck is that? Like, I was, I'm curious. And I said to Amanda, I said, honey, what are you doing here? It's your staff Christmas party. She said, I can't stand the small talk. I can't stand being hit on all the time. I can't stand the shallowness. Here at the Death Cafe, I meet real people who say real things, and it's really important. Of course I'd come here. I went, wow, isn't that cool? What would happen if death were the bridge over the generation gap? Just saying, just putting it out there, because that's what's happening in my hometown at these death cafes that we run, is that kids are coming out because they're dying for reality, they're dying for contact, they're dying for meaning. And talking about death gives them meaning. It's remarkable. I'm so surprised at the results. It's like, wow. I started with one person. Came, I said, Death Cafe? They were scared shitless, so they came because they were scared. And then there was 2. And then there were 4. And then the last time there was 20. Now we had standing room only for a death cafe. It's fantastic. And because people there are embracing death, it's not about grief and loss. That may come up too, but they're embracing death and looking at it. The young kids are living even more passionately. And the elderly are sitting a little taller because the young girls come and sit with the old crones, right? Sandy's a crone. It's an old title that we don't use anymore, but it means a wisdom carrier. And Sandy's 87, so she's sitting there. And all of a sudden, the death cafe's over and there's 4 young girls around her feet asking her stuff. It's remarkable. Sandy said this is a beautiful share. Her husband died 9 years ago. She and her husband had a really beautiful relationship, and she loved him deeply, still does, misses him profoundly. You know what she said to the group? I'm such a lucky woman. My husband died. I have enough time to experience life as a single woman. I've never been a single woman before. I got married when I was 17. And the girls are going, what? Like it's such a mind twister that she would miss her husband deeply, but be so grateful that he passed because now she can experience life as a mature woman. And she's dating. And the girls are just going like, what the heck is that, you know? But what a great example. Another example of how you can turn the loss of a loved one into a gift. She'd never experienced life as a single woman. And at the age of, if I was 85, I'd date her. Like she's hot, she's alive, and she's vital, and she's beautiful, and she's wise, and she's got so much to give. And the girls know that, so they sit with her. And the guys come around and sit with me because I'm kind of an older guy. And they ask me questions about, well, how did you get started in your work? What did you do? How do you stay motivated? What do you, they used to ask life questions. And yet the topic is death. So you see what could happen if we got clever here in Terrace and decided Grim Reaper is not welcome here. By the way, it's a myth. It came out of the Judeo-Christian religions of medieval times, and it started over in Europe. And we just brought it here. We just made it up. So I've looked for the Grim Reaper. I've looked all over the world for the Grim Reaper. He doesn't exist in Peru. Clearly doesn't exist in India. Doesn't exist in Bali. Doesn't exist in Costa Rica. Not in Hawaii. Not in Mexico. I can't find the Grim Reaper anywhere. Nowhere. So I'm thinking, what the heck? We're being run around by the nose by something that doesn't exist? Yep. We're being run around by the nose because of a fear of something that is made up by us. We just made it up. You go into a hospital and sit and notice what's going on and feel what's happening in there. Feel the fear. Feel it in the nurses. Feel it in the doctors. Feel it in the families that are around. Feel it in the one who's dying. Feel it, and the place is just stuck. We get the drugs out, we get the machines out, and all this kind of stuff, and there's nothing wrong with the drugs or the machines. If it's the right medicine at the right time for the right person. Sometimes it's right to let somebody go. I watched a friend of mine, Daniel. He fought with cancer for 6 years. Last year of his life, he's fighting because he doesn't want to die. He's afraid to die. Won't even talk about it. I'm going to beat it. I'm going to win. The last year of his life was shit. He ate chemotherapy over and over and stem cell transplants. He was flat on his back or barfing for the last year of his life. I thought to myself, whew. I said, Daniel, can we have a talk about your quality of life? No, he would not talk about it. Because he was frightened to death of death. So frightened was he that he wasn't living in the last year of his life, he was dying. Because he wanted to live so badly. And there's nothing wrong with that. But at some point, we've got to have these conversations about what's the quality of your life. His last 6 months, he was flat in his back. His 86-year-old parents watched his body wither away to nothing. And they kept on pumping him full of chemo and stem cell and this and that, and machines to make him breathe, and machines to make him eat, and machines to make him shit. And it was horrible. He just lay in a bed for 6 months. And his family watched this. Just because we have the technology doesn't mean it's right. Pardon me for being so bold, but this is what we're talking about. And if somebody had you know what happened finally? A new doctor came onto the ward, young guy, and he looked at my friend Daniel, and he said to me, what are we doing here? I said, oh, thank you for asking the question. He called an immediate meeting of the family, and he said to them, what are you doing with your loved one? This is abusive, he said. Thank you. They pulled the plug that day, and Daniel died that night. And the family didn't have to endure the agony of watching their loved one in a protracted death. This is what Stephen Jenkinson speaks about. Just because we have the technology doesn't mean we have to use it. What's best for the overall good of the entire family, including the one who's passing. Just string it out like that. I had to tell my dad that his daughter Jody died unexpectedly. How do you tell that to my dad, to a father of a child? I mean, he was so angry at God. You know, it's not supposed to be that way. That parents are supposed to predecease the children. So I had to tell my father at 2 o'clock in the morning that his daughter Jody had passed away unexpectedly. Wow, that was hard on him. And it was really hard on my mom, because it's not supposed to be like that. But you know what? At the time, I was a stockbroker. I had lots of curly hair, and I had the right glasses, I had the right shoes. I wouldn't wear yellow socks because that's not Bay Street, you know? And I had all the right stuff. I had the ping golf clubs, I had the BMW. I was making a whole bunch of money, and my sister died. Wow, was that ever a shock to me? But I looked at her death, and I tried to negotiate with God. I said, God, like God's the only person in the world who could ever hit a 1-iron, because 1-irons are pretty hard to hit. That's golf, right? God didn't want my ping golf clubs. God didn't want my RSP or my stock options or my BMW or my Hugo Boss suit. God didn't want anything I had. Everything I struggled my whole life to gather and earn and make meaning of was worthless. I was so angry at God. And you won't take my BMW? God, it's black. It's the best BMW in the planet. You don't want that? I want my sister back. God said, no. No deal. She's dead. Deal with it. Oh. So I looked at my life and I thought, what am I doing? My sister died not knowing how much I loved her. I didn't say it often enough because we're a Christian family. You say, don't say I love you very much. And you kind of do the little hug thing and, you know, it's the polite stuff. Because I can tell her tomorrow. I can tell her next Christmas. I can tell her on her next birthday. And I just realized, oh my God, I've made a slight mistake here. I've been chasing all this stuff and not living life fully. So on my sister's death, I quit my job. Became a social worker. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for her death. Wow. Whew. Isn't that something? Like, I miss her deeply. Her name was Jody. She was just this amazing woman, generous beyond belief, compassionate, loving, caring, made shitty coffee, but you can excuse that. And she's dead. But her death birthed me. Knocked me out of my stupor, my sound asleepness, my North American go for the money thing. Woke me up. I got my life back because my sister lost hers. Wow. And I'm so grateful that she died. And yet I miss her profoundly and deeply. Had she not passed away, I would still be on Bay Street. I'd be sound asleep like Neo in the Matrix. But her death woke me up. I'm forever grateful. That's why I do what I do. Because I was served by my sister's passing. And we could learn how to do that. Yeah, I miss her. That's why I wear crazy socks. Because she wore crazy socks. It's my way of remembering Jody, keeping her alive in my heart. We could do things differently if we allowed ourselves to get that maybe death is not the enemy. Maybe death doesn't need to be fought at all costs. Do you know we spend half of our healthcare budget on 5% of the people in the last 10 months of their life? $1 million a year is spent in Northern Health on 5% of your population in the last 10 months of their life. Not that they don't deserve good health care, but come on now. It's all about prolonging your life, so there's lots that could change if we would only allow ourselves to get that we've made a slight error in identifying death as the grim reaper. If we change our relationship with death, the whole world could change. The whole healthcare system could change. We had a great time here.
Good.
You're a wonderful host, thank you.
Oh, I wasn't even here.
Thank you for the space.
You're very welcome. And I mean it. You brought a wonderful spirit and energy and thoughts into this space.
Yeah, you're welcome. Amazing how we could have so much fun talking about death and dying.
I know, you made
And
it.
the place is even more alive than it was when we came in on Friday, right?
That's what I was saying. It's surprisingly uplifting.
Yeah, and we're not in a rush on the death, though, remember?
Good. We have long time. We have
Lots of time.
lots of
More
time.
than enough time.
Let's hope we have lots of time. But no, I shouldn't say that because we're not afraid of death.
No, not at all. It comes when it comes.
So what was, did you find anything surprising with the group?
You know, they were really open and welcome and considerate and loving, and they really participated. They really kind of hopped in and just learned with us and did some really neat stuff. It was really an alive group.
Especially because it was a bit of a risk, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
But yeah, it was a great time, and it's quite interesting that death can actually be very inspiring and uplifting. And I think that's what the group walked away with this weekend was, wow, death is a taboo topic, but when we talk about it, the energy in the room, if everybody has fun, we had humor. There was some sadness, there were some tears, but there was also this lifting up of energy. And you felt it when you walked through the door today.
I did. And there are plans for future gatherings?
Yep. This is going to get a few things organized. We'll have maybe a death cafe here in the terrace, and maybe I come back. Maybe we have kind of a death club. I don't know. We'll just create some stuff that starts to have death being more part of your life, which is really important.
What I heard you say is get to know yourself.
Yep.
And plus something in
Yep.
our bodies.
Yep.
Take care of ourselves.
Yep.
Each other.
Yep.
And just
Yep.
we're alive and be
Yep.
ready
What
for the
happens?
transition.
Sasha, what happens if death is actually a community development tool? What happens if we could use death to like bring the community together? Maybe that would be fantastic. Maybe death is the bridge over the generations.
There you go.
Who knows?
Because we never know.
You never know. Thanks for having us, eh?
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thanks for
appreciate it.
making this space
Oh, yeah.
so wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
So what did you think? I hope it made you think about death in different ways. I really found it very encouraging and very uplifting. And as Stephen pointed out, we can look at death as a motivator, as a teacher, and look at it differently as opposed to just a scary thing that happens to all of us. If you're watching this before June 27th, we're partnering with the city and we'll be on the stage at the Farmers Market in George Little Park between 9:30 and 2 p.m. There'll be different performances and also Skinner Diversity is hosting art workshops. There'll also be yoga, tai chi, volleyball, soccer, and many other games. So thanks for joining in and we'll see you next month.